had some skill set with front-end web development. I had capable of building a website.
You learned SQL too as well. You learned some stuff about databases.
Yeah, exactly. So I understood a lot of the underlying technology and how to build different applications and services. But totally, I did not have the right background, and people didn't like the idea that I could do their job, given my background as well.
Given your background and your hair.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy's too good looking to be a product manager.
Yeah, exactly. That always was the issue.
No homo, to be clear. Audience.
Welcome to the Early Podcast, where I interview the builders behind the world's most iconic companies. I'm Max Crowley. I was Uber's 25th employee and spent years scaling one of this generation's wildest rides. Each week, I sit down with the early innovators who really made it all happen. So please, tune in, like the show, subscribe, tell your friends, keep coming back. Let's go.
Jeremy Lermitte, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Very excited to be here.
We've done this a few times, but now we've moved to a studio, so we've elevated.
Now it's official.
This is official.
Yeah.
And you're a podcast guy, so...
I'm a huge podcast guy.
just check out my LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
You are Canadian. You're a very kind Canadian. What was the best part of where you grew up?
The best part, honestly, the food. I grew up in Vancouver, where you have a lot of different ethnic foods from Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese. It's just a very multicultural city. And so it was just really not uncommon for me to always be eating something different every day of the week.
Yeah, like some poutine and stuff too?
They do have really good poutine. That was usually at the end of the night. Yeah, yeah. That's bar food.
I know you were working at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
What were those jobs that you were doing? And why were you working at such a young age?
Yeah, my father always pushed work ethic, hard work. That's how we're going to get ahead. He's a financial planner. And so it was always about teaching us about money from an early age. How do you make money? You go to work. How do you get your own money? Maybe you have an allowance, but ultimately, if you want to get the things you want, you got to go out there and hustle and work hard. So some of my early jobs, I think I was in the 7th grade working on a blueberry farm one summer. You know, that transitioned into working at a produce market on the corner that was owned by a family that also had a driving range and a farm. And so throughout high school, I was kind of operating between these businesses, very long hours in farming. So funny transition to end up in the technology business.
And then your dad's like, hey, you got to save this money.
Totally.
Let's plan for the future. And then you go to college and you lose $25,000 in the stock market.
Yeah. So I basically learned all of these different, I can drive excavators, tractors, I can build fences, I can do what a traditional landscaping business operator is doing. So I started a landscaping company, made a good amount of money through that, had $25K essentially put aside by the end of my senior year. And I thought, hey, there's this trading firm. I'm going to go work there. I'm going to leverage my money as much as I can. And I'll just naturally double, triple, quadruple this $25K. And I lost it all over like a 6-month period.
What did you put it into?
So the strategy was called pair trading. It's basically you go long and short companies that are very similar in sectors. So I might be long Coke and short Pepsi, and I'm trying to eke out the margins between those two businesses. But ultimately, it wasn't a strategy that I was very good at. There was other people that made money. I was not one of them. I think you have to have those early ego hits. It was helpful for my decision-making later.
Yeah, what do you think you took from that experience?
Just you're not always right. When I was younger, I was very certain about specific things, or I'm going to become a millionaire through this trading thing. And it didn't work. And that was kind of my first, I guess, oh, maybe I'm not invincible. Maybe I'm not the smartest guy in the room.
Again, as we said, you grew up in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Most people you know were probably not moving to the U.S. for work.
Yeah.
You go to school in that area, and then you end up making a decision to move to New York City, which was a big deal for you. How do you come to that decision, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. I think a lot of people thought I was crazy. Not a lot of people who I grew up with were packing their bags and moving to different cities. Most people were getting jobs locally. And when I did the trading thing, I had gotten my Series 7, which allows me to trade on the US equity markets. And I was pursuing a career in finance, but I was running into a lot of roadblocks as 2010, and the Canadian banking industry was fairly contracted from 2008 still. And I felt like technology was probably going to be the next sector that was really going to be the area of growth. And so a friend and I actually were building kind of an automated portfolio management tool, a class actually at General Assembly, if you're familiar with, they basically retrain folks who come from different backgrounds into technology, and I took their second front-end web development course. So that was the initial setup. It was more, hey, I'm really interested in technology. There's this course I can take in New York City. Why not I go do that while I'm trying to figure out how to build this portfolio management tool? And then I got here and my eyes were wide open. And I was like, oh man, the sky's the limit. That's how I got here. It was a pretty crazy shift from living in Vancouver, that's for sure.
What was the next few months like? I mean, you don't have any money really.
No.
You're like piecing together these random kind of thoughts. You end up in New York. I know your dad gave you really good advice at that time.
Yeah, I think my dad really believed in me knowing what I was doing and was willing to give me the push and the support to go out and find an opportunity in a real technology job. There was just setback after setback in terms of I would find opportunities to work at different companies, and whether it was my story or my qualifications, always failed to get the job. But he was always there to say, hey, don't worry about it. There's another opportunity around the corner. Just keep pushing. And in preparing for this conversation, going back and looking at some of those emails, it's really encouraging to know that I had all that support, or to be reminded that I had all that support, because it definitely helped.
You're unemployed dude in New York, don't know exactly what you're doing, and you end up at Uber.
Yeah.
But that was after months of failed interviews.
Yeah, so I had a lot of conversations with different people inside the New York City tech community, let's call it that. At the time, it was 2011, 2012, it was relatively small. There's a handful of companies in New York that are doing really well. And every single event that was taking place every night that was related to tech, I was there and I was trying to talk to somebody. And what eventually led to my role at Uber was a guy, Scott Pollock. If my memory is correct, I believe I met him on Twitter. And he was in the same kind of New York City tech circle. I knew a few people that he knew and vice versa. And he was putting together a Skillshare on business development. So we got talking, and through the course of a few months, people back and forth to one another. Hey, you should meet so-and-so. You should meet so-and-so. And he introduced me to a guy who worked at Shutterstock. David Fraga, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was hiring for a business development sales role. I had no qualifications whatsoever to be in sales or run a sales team. I had a finance degree. I was doing front-end web development. And he took the interview largely because of the introduction from Scott. And within probably 15 minutes of the interview, he pretty quickly knew I wasn't qualified. But he said, hey, I really like you. I don't actually think you're qualified for this job. And I was quick to acknowledge, yeah, I'm not really, but do you have anything else? Do you know anyone? I was quickly
I'll do anything.
Yeah, literally like, well, if I can't do this role, do you have another role? Or can you introduce me to somebody that has a role? And he said, yeah, my roommate actually works at this company called Uber. Would you be interested in getting in touch with them? And of course, I knew what Uber was because it was very plugged into the tech scene at the time. And so I got an interview at Uber through that, and the rest kind of became history.
Yeah, and this is early 2012, so this is still pretty early on in the scheme of Uber.
Yeah, I couldn't afford to take an Uber ride at the time. It was like black car only. And I think one of their questions was like, have you used the product? And I hadn't, but I was just really excited. And eventually I became the fourth employee in the New York office.
Take me back to that time. It's May 2012.
Yeah.
You're balls to the wall. I mean, you get dropped into this thing. I know you were sweating bullets when you got going.
Yeah.
What are those first couple of weeks like?
Yeah, no one's telling you what to do, really. It's kind of, this thing is growing at a tremendous speed. You need to figure it out. And I did. What I realized very quickly was what the company was valuing and what the management was valuing at the time was how quickly can you respond to support tickets? How quickly can you solve the customer problem? And so I would just respond to customers at an incredible clip, and I became one of the fastest at solving support tickets in New York City and at the company at the time. I think there was a couple other folks up there. I think you probably were up there, but that's where I devoted a lot of time and then eventually got into more interesting projects. But that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, and maybe just paint us a picture, because I mean, it is wild. That is what was happening at the local level at that time, especially in New York. New York was notorious for customer complaints.
Yeah.
But we ask for a rating after every ride. If someone rates it a 3 or below, we prompt them for feedback. And in New York, they're writing in and they expect to respond. And we were just hammering away at the local level on answering all these support tickets.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And people weren't expecting you to respond, which in New York City taxi, there's no complaint system. There's no hope of a response.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck. And so I think a lot of times people were just surprised that you were listening and you were responding. And so we were handing out $5, $10, $15 credits if there was an issue. And that was making people very excited to tell other people about the product. Yeah, I think the local aspect of it, as I'm sure many people have shared, was a super important piece of the success early on.
Yeah, I mean, that ends up even developing relationships for you with people you're still friends with today.
Yeah.
It helps you build trust in the community that gets you into events and things that help grow the brand. I mean, there's a lot that was happening when you're really putting your name and email and your face on this product that people were interacting with a ton.
Totally. And there was some situations where I'd get on the phone with people. Like I knew who all the top riders were in the city. And it was that extra touch that would go a long way. And I think we knew the city really well. We knew if there was rush hour. We had the ability to query, let's say the Upper East Side, it was raining on Wednesday. We knew that, and we knew that it was difficult to get a car there. So we would email all those folks who tried to get a car that day in the Upper East Side, and we would send them an opportunity to ride again with a $5 or $10 credit. So those types of techniques worked really well. And in terms of how tech worked at that time and people doing things based on their location, it was pretty limited. Like Uber was one of the first to do those types of things.
You end up working on some local business development.
Yeah.
Did a deal with HBO's Boardwalk Empire, which I loved that one, where we had like old 1920s cars on the system. Deals with Tesla, Equinox. How did those come together?
It's great when you are this super interesting company. A lot of these brands are coming to us. Different marketing agencies were pitching us things all the time. And so we really got to pick and choose what we got involved with. And we wanted to obviously keep ourselves aligned with other really high quality brands. So I got to be involved with New York Fashion Week every year and some of the top brands in fashion. I did different deals with one of them being HBO, where what you mentioned, doing really cool on-demand 1920s cars, the Tesla Equinox thing. I think we were just like sending Teslas to Equinox because it was maybe better for the environment or cool. I don't know anymore. I can't remember. But it was fun and people wanted to be associated with cool brands. I think the coolest thing I did, and this was more ideas from myself and others in the office, was doing Uber Chopper and making it possible for you to be able to request a helicopter through the system.
Yeah, the true founder of the Uber Chopper, not Nikhil. I'm going to go tell him.
Well, now there's, what's the other? Blade is one of them. Yeah. I mean, to us, we were like, hey, I don't think there's enough volume in this game for this to really make sense. Why don't we just make it a PR stunt?
All right, so let's start at the beginning. So what is the Uber Chopper?
The Uber Chopper was, we put an iPhone in a helicopter and you were able to request a helicopter from the West Side to the Hamptons or the East Side to the Hamptons during July 4th weekend. And that was it. I mean, it was crazy at the time. We literally had these iPhones being held by these helicopter drivers or pilots, sorry.
And so how does that even start? So you come up with this idea and like, what's the next step?
Yeah, so I came up with the idea and I basically just started making phone calls to these different helicopter charter companies. And for the most part, they all thought I was crazy and they would just hang up or they would say, I don't really understand, or no, we're not interested. And the one person that I got the yes out of ended up having the largest helicopter charter business in New York, and I think North America, because most of the traffic's in New York. So the person I got the yes from was the person that mattered most. And I went out to their office. They actually put myself and a couple other employees in a helicopter. We went around the city and we kind of walked through what we needed to do to make it work. And we had it run pretty seamlessly. We actually had a couple engineers from San Francisco come just to help us build out the little more granular adjustments to the app that needed to take place for it to work. But it was really fun.
I mean, it epitomizes what was happening at the local level, which was come up with an idea. If you can figure it out, go crazy, run on it, make it happen. And we did.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these different marketing stunts, if you want to call them that, were very organic and developed and led by these local teams, and management from my manager to folks back at headquarters in San Francisco were very much just, hey, that sounds cool, go do it. There wasn't anyone telling us it didn't align with the brand, or don't do that, there's safety concerns, or some of maybe the normal questions you might ask at a bigger company.
And I think one of the operators that you'd reached out to ended up circling back around after they said no to you.
Yeah, of course. After we got all the press, there was a couple that wanted to know if we could get some charters after that, and I said no.
And this thing sold out too, right? Everybody was using it.
Well, that's actually the funny story, is the weather was really bad that day that we had it running. So we only were able to get 2 rides out. One of them was a CEO in the city, and another one was an investor in Uber. But it didn't matter. We could have gotten 0 rides to take place.
It was the press.
The press blew it up. The capabilities. Oh, I didn't think that Uber could also deliver other things. This is very much bled into so many other marketing stunts and then eventual capabilities at Uber. But yeah, it kind of gave people an imagination of what Uber could potentially be.
You never doubted Uber. You always, from the start, were like, this thing's going to work.
Yeah.
How did you feel when Uber ended up getting into a bunch of negative moments and the press was hammering it? It was tough for everybody, but what was going through your head at that time?
My background was in finance, and so one of the key things that I saw with Uber, they were very transparent in the interview process, was that this company is making a lot of revenue very quickly. It wasn't about, let's say at the time, Foursquare and eyeballs or clicks and page views or monthly active users. These were all the metrics that a lot of other software businesses were paying attention to, whereas Uber was more about trips and revenue. And so from the financial perspective, I felt like the company could be a huge company. But the second part of your question, in terms of when stuff really started to hit the fan, I think some of it was naturally self-inflicted. And then other parts of it were some levels of manipulation, or the press having a certain narrative they wanted to portray. Instead of being, let's say, completely objective, which is difficult to be, they were coming in it with a very clear agenda. One of the interesting moments where that kind of hit me in the face was I was responsible as the product manager for in-app chat. So when you chat with your driver, you could now do that natively inside the app. It wasn't over SMS, or if you wanted to make a voice call, you could use VoIP and you wouldn't have to go through the telecoms. And that was saving a lot of our drivers money, and especially countries outside of the US where SMS and just traditional phone calls can be quite expensive. And by the way, this was a lot safer than a driver. We had you can use the app now. It hasn't changed much. You have pre-selected, I'm here, be right there. Those were just the most common things that were being said. When the press got it, the headline was, Uber encourages drivers to text while driving.
Of course, encourages.
Yeah, exactly. It was,
please be more unsafe.
Yeah, exactly. It was like bringing up these big safety concerns. And I remember I couldn't make it to a call with a journalist. And then, of course, the headlines and their story were super negative. And
no comment from the Uber spokesperson.
Yeah, the customer is celebrating this product, and it's like a win-win for everybody, but you don't want to take the time to have a conversation with me to see that. You already have your perception of what Uber is and how bad of a company and evil of a company it is. So I'm going to write that instead. And I get it. Ultimately, they're running a business of their own to generate clicks. But that's where you start to sometimes doubt how objective some of these companies are. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but there are good journalists out there, of course, but not everyone's playing on the same standards.
We jumped ahead a bit. I mean, you're in New York for a few years. You then make a decision to move to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. How did that come to be? You joined the pro team. Maybe just take me back to that time of just why did you move to SF? What was going through your mind then? And what were you sort of hitting the ground running and doing when you got to San Francisco?
Yeah. So what I saw with the business was a lot of things were going to be centralized. Of course, you were going to have your local teams, and they were important. I was part of them. I knew how important they were. But there was an opportunity to join the pro team, which was kind of centralizing a lot of the processes. The things that worked at the city level, the idea was, can we make that more scalable with a centralized team? And so I moved to San Francisco to join that team in an effort to help centralize a lot of these processes so that not everyone was going to reinvent the wheel.
And what were you working on?
I transitioned pretty quickly onto our growth team. A lot of what I was working on at that time was what our messaging strategies were, what our marketing communication strategies were with riders and drivers. So when I was in the New York City office, I had taught myself how to write SQL. And so I was writing queries all the time about some of these scenarios that I described, where it's like raining on the Upper East Side, or here's a bunch of riders who took a first trip and it's been 7 days and they haven't taken a second one. Can we encourage them to do so with some sort of messaging or incentive? I was doing a lot of this at the local level. And so the idea was, hey, can we do this in a more centralized way? And then there was this growth team that was being developed at Uber at that time, being run by Ed Baker. And I quickly found myself being drawn towards that group.
What was drawing you towards that group?
They were really focused on, first of all, Uber product market fit perfect, right? Like
nailed it.
Sometimes I think none of us needed to be there and it would have been just as successful.
Yeah.
But the growth team was trying to figure out all the different ways we could accelerate growth. And that was really exciting to me because I was trying to figure those things out in the New York office, and they were giving me a lot of opportunities to try different things, working with their product teams, working with their engineers. And so I quickly ended up spending almost all my time there and then eventually joining that team.
What was the journey to you becoming a product manager? Because this was a time where it was mostly ex-Google people. They were highly technical.
Yeah.
That was not an easy jump for you with really no technical background.
Yeah.
In any real sort of professional setting.
Totally. Or what happened basically, I had some skill set with front-end web development. I had capable of building websites. So I knew how...
You learned SQL too as well. You
learned
some stuff about databases.
Yeah, exactly. So I understood a lot of the underlying technology and how to build different applications and services. But totally, I did not have the right background, and people didn't like the idea that I could do their job, given my background as well.
Given your background and your hair.
Yeah, exactly. So
this guy's too good looking to be a product manager.
Yeah, exactly. That always was the issue.
No homo, to be clear. Audience.
So what happened was I'm on the growth team at some point, right? And I'm quickly seeing the gaps between the product managers and the engineers and what they're building, because I was on the ground. I was an operator. I kind of knew what the customer needed. I had really deep insight into that. And I think a lot of the training before that at different big tech companies was more focused. They could A/B test things really quickly, move a button. It was all what was happening in the app. And the feedback cycle with Uber was a lot different, because you would build a particular feature or some application, and something had to happen on the ground and you needed to understand what was happening on the ground to get the feedback. And so I just had a lot of insight into what the customer really wanted. And I had a really strong belief in what needed to be built. And so over time, I was using my influence being on the growth team to dictate what different product managers were building, what different engineering platform teams were building. And over time, I was just able to convince leadership that, hey, you should actually give me a shot at being a product manager here. And I went through a very rigorous interview process before I was able to get that title with a lot of key leadership at the company. So it was kind of a big deal at the time. And then they eventually built a whole system for people to transition into product from operations. But at the time, it was certainly a challenge, but a really rewarding experience.
In messaging at that time, we're doing millions of rides a day, a week at that point. I mean, the volume's pretty significant. Yeah. And all the messaging is just texting still. So the app says the driver's phone number. You can either call it. We did some anonymization of the phone number to try and preserve some safety there, but for both sides.
Yeah.
It was a contained experience to that ride.
Yeah.
But then the messaging is, again, anonymized, but still it's text message we're paying.
Yeah, and the delivery of SMS is really unreliable. Very unreliable.
Especially outside the United States.
Yes. Yeah.
So in the US.
And like international, South America, Asia, they're not using text at all.
And so what you guys come up with is, hey, let's actually bring all the messaging into the app and then also try and streamline it to drivers. Because even if the media can say whatever they want, drivers are messaging. And let's try and find a way to make it safer.
Yeah. Let's try and make it safer and faster and cheaper.
What was that endeavor like to take that on
Yeah.
at the time? Because I know you were up against some headwinds where people were like, hey.
Yeah, I think at a big company, especially like Uber at that time, you have so many competing priorities in the business. And something like building in-app messaging that was going to save money when we have billions and billions of dollars in the bank account. It wasn't necessarily clear that it was going to drive more trips, but we were going to certainly save money and we were going to certainly make the experience better. Logically, if we build this, my perspective was this is going to be a much better user experience. But it was almost the fault of the business. We were so data driven. The questions were more, how is this going to impact revenue? How many more trips am I going to get out of this? Everything was very...
Is the customer going to be stickier? Is the driver going to be stickier?
Right. And my perspective was more, this is just going to be a better experience and we'll get these other metrics out of it. But without building it, it was hard to prove that. And so I wasn't getting a tremendous amount of support internally, but with Uber culture, I wasn't being told no. And so I was able to essentially assemble a team of back-end engineers, mobile engineers, and a couple of my existing product designers who were really excited about the idea along with me. And we were able to build the product kind of outside of the system of your regular check-ins and priorities. And once we had built it and people saw how it worked, it was kind of game over from there. It was pretty clear that this was going to be a better experience. And we were going to worry about how it impacted the metrics after. As long as we don't hurt the metrics, this is a better experience and it's going to keep rolling out. And so we went to Indonesia, we went to India, we were in Jakarta in Indonesia, which is, they're really using a lot of WhatsApp and they're not using phone calls, text messages whatsoever. And we're in India, we're in Brazil. Brazil in particular, very, very expensive to make a phone call. In some cases, if the driver had to pick up their phone, that was essentially the profit they'd make from the ride. So the customer ultimately loved the product we built on both sides.
What did that teach you about just going and doing something versus sort of asking for permission and waiting for the yes?
I think that's how I've modeled a lot of my career, is looking at where can I provide value and then really just kind of leaning in and not taking no as an answer. I was pretty persistent and I had a strong belief. I had strong conviction. I think if it didn't work, people probably would have been upset, but there's no risk in taking the risk, if that makes sense.
You may have been deported.
Yeah, I may have been deported or fired. Yeah, I might have been fired. But I think ultimately you have to, a hockey analogy, more shots on goal, right? And so you have to be taking risks in order to get rewarded, and playing it safe doesn't work.
When you look back at Uber now, what do you think made you successful there?
I was just really persistent. Getting the job, I was really persistent. Becoming a product manager, I was really persistent. There was internal self-belief that I could do these things. If you look at where I came from, my background, and who I was working with people that were way smarter than I am, coming from much more prestigious schools. But I believed fundamentally in myself. Certainly when I started working with these people, I realized, hey, I think I'm just as smart as them. Maybe I can hang, exactly. And that gave me the confidence to keep driving things forward.
What's a good Travis Kalanick story?
There's a lot of funny stories. I think, people failed. The media created this perception of who this guy is, right? And that show also...
It didn't help. Or further perpetuate.
Yeah, what was it called?
Super Pumped.
Super Pumped. And I think Travis is, at his core, a super driven but nerdy guy. Very, very brilliant. And also just like willing to connect with whoever. He was always at the office, hanging out with people. It didn't matter who you were. And I think one of the fun stories is he texted me one day to hang out with him and his girlfriend. And I brought my girlfriend along. We went to Build-A-Bear in San Francisco.
The place where evil CEOs go.
Yeah, exactly. That's where all the evil CEOs go. So we built some bears for our girlfriends, and then we went to an arcade, like a bar arcade afterwards, and played arcade games. And I couldn't have been kind of more wholesome in many ways, but it was a fun time. And I think maybe he's not as evil as everyone thinks he is.
Exactly. If you look back on the Uber experience, what are your kind of couple of core learnings that stick with you today?
It's a good question. Are you asking from my personal experience, or what did I learn while I was there?
Like a synopsis on your time at Uber.
I sometimes think about it as the best and worst experience of my life because it was everything and it created my identity in many ways. In friend groups in New York City, I was known as like the Uber guy.
Not me, I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. This pod. But I learned so much at Uber that now, having started my own company, I know for a fact I would not be as successful as I am today with my own company had I not gone through the experience at Uber. Or if I had stayed at Uber, I don't think I'd be doing as well with my business today. It really showed me how much persistence, work ethic matter, and just experimentation. There was a lot of things we did at Uber to kind of figure out what we needed to build and how to iterate from a product perspective that has really helped me in my future.
What is Red Circle?
So Red Circle is an ad platform for podcasting. Funny enough, we help brands come into podcasting and use this channel as a great way to grow their brand.
Your co-founder, Mike Hayden, you guys went from hating each other
Yes.
to being now founders and partners for, 7 years, 6 years?
Yeah, I've actually been working on Red Circle longer than I've worked at Uber now.
Oh, man.
I worked at Uber for 6.5 years, and I've basically been working on Red Circle for 6.5 years.
So if you still have your job as co-founder tomorrow, you'll surpass your time at Uber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the best story, and this is the intensity that Uber had. I was on the growth team. I had very strong conviction about what we should have been building and what the customer needed and how to deliver that to the customer. And Mike Hayden, my business partner now, he was running a platform engineering team. So they were responsible for a lot of the low-level services of sending, billions of push notifications, making sure all the phone calls went through, anonymizing the phone calls, making sure SMS carriers were set up around the world so that we could deliver these billions of messages per month. And we just didn't see eye to eye on what internal systems we should be building for the operators at a local level. I think that's where a lot of our friction started off. And eventually our managers, Aaron Shilkraut was my manager, can't remember exactly who his manager was. They decided the best way to solve this is promote Jeremy into this product manager role and have him work with Caden as his partner on what Uber was going to build from a communication marketing technology perspective. I don't know if he would remember this, but I really clearly do. The first day that I was working with him, I sat down with his team and no one spoke to me. No one explained why I was there. But over time, we developed a really strong relationship. And I developed a really strong relationship with all the engineers as well. And we built some really fantastic product together.
And now I've been building Red Circle for a long time.
Exactly. And I don't think we've had a real serious fight in that entire time. And we've been through some crazy moments in the business as well.
What's a crazy moment that stands out?
The typical startup where we're one payroll away from going bankrupt and we get the money wired in and we save the day. You're always just fighting for that extra day. And again, those are some of the things I learned at Uber was our last fundraise. We're now a profitable business. It's growing at a very nice clip. But in 2021, we had gone out to fundraise and we had basically spoken to 100 VCs. This is where like all the self-doubt is coming into play. You're like...
At least 100 conversations.
Yeah, you're probably having at least 100 conversations. And this is a common story because it's a reality. We oftentimes in the media only hear about the top 1% of 1% of companies who raise at crazy, ridiculous valuations. But most startup companies are grinding and they're going month to month, trying to figure things out. And we were probably in over 100 conversations at this time. There's a lot of doubt on, are we crazy? Are they stupid?
They're missing something.
Yeah, like they just don't get it. But I think a lot of startups fail because number one, the co-founders hate each other. They don't get along. They fight over something. We had already worked past that. And then there's the persistence game. People give up. People say, F it. Like, I don't want to do this anymore because it's hard. And that was what I learned at Uber, was that game of persistence, that game of getting to the next day to give myself another opportunity to try again. And so after 100 odd conversations, we eventually convinced the right people who we believe saw the vision correctly. And they gave us the money and we made payroll. And that was not something we shared with the employees until afterwards, but we were really happy to make sure that thing kept running. And then we basically turned the business around from there and became a fully sustainable business, growing at a really nice clip here now.
What is the state of the business now? I know that you guys started as a hosting platform. You still do that, but it's not really core to what you do. As you look at the business now, what's the biggest opportunity?
Yeah, with every company, and we were told this when we were going to get started, is you have this idea of what's going to work, or most of the time you're going to have to change things along the way because you're not going to get it perfect from the get-go. So we started as a hosting distribution platform for podcasts. We still do that today, but where we make the majority of our revenue is on the ad platform that we've built. So now we plug into thousands of podcasters and networks in the industry. And we're really focused on the brand side of bringing new brands who find success within the channel. So we help them plan their spend within podcasting. We give them really good performance data. We show them that the channel works. We help them manage that spend through our ad platform. And it's ultimately what we believe is going to make this industry bigger, is bringing more dollars into it and bringing more creators into it that way, who see the opportunity to make a living in this industry.
What's a good example of a brand that's worked with you guys, and what podcasts have they worked with, and what success did they see?
A lot of different brands we work with, and we work with a lot of brands, sometimes directly, sometimes through agencies, sometimes through big holdcos. So I could provide a lot of examples. I think one interesting one we have right now today it's called mood.com, and they're in the THC business. They mail directly to your door, and we've been helping them with their strategy from the very beginning and helping them scale it. And it's been a real true growth channel for them. They've told me that it's one of their lowest CPA channels against all their different marketing channels, which is great to hear.
A lot of people chase the next Uber. A lot of the people that we worked with, understandably, a lot of people have kind of struggled to figure out their next act. I think in a lot of ways, you feel good, really good about what you've done. What do you think the key to you figuring out, what was next was?
Yeah, it's a good question. I never saw Uber as my be all end all. I don't have it on my Instagram. I don't have it anywhere on my LinkedIn other than, the roles I had at the business. I'm very proud of the work I did there. And I don't ever want a company to be my identity. And that's the point of view that I've held for a long time. When you look at how all of us got involved at Uber, I think we all thought it was going to be a successful company, but none of us knew how successful. And I think a lot of times if you're chasing that success, you're just never going to find it. And so it's better to come in from a more humble perspective of where's a good opportunity for me to find fulfillment and be happy working on something I'm passionate about and care about without necessarily being so concerned about the outcome. Focus on the journey, really.
What's a piece of advice that you would give your 22-year-old self in Vancouver who just lost 25 grand in the market and trying to figure out his life?
I would say proximity matters, number one. So that was something that a lot of people told me not to do that I did anyways. You can get the job here in Vancouver. And my belief was that relationships matter, being present, proximity matters.
Get to the center of the universe.
Get to the center of the universe. And so it's like, where are the tech jobs going to be? San Francisco, New York. I had a finance background. I felt like that was going to be more applicable in New York than in San Francisco. So let's get there and make something happen. And then I think the second piece of advice is always just don't let up, don't stop. Someone tells you no, ask them for an introduction, ask them for help. People, more often than not, are actually really willing to help. You just have to ask.
All right, so to close out, I've got the lightning round. You down to do a little lightning round? Step in. All right, so you're going to give me your quick answers. No messing around here, okay?
All right.
No water. Average lights out time.
10:30.
What's your favorite podcast that you started listening to in the last 2 years?
All in, but I hate it now.
What's your favorite one that you guys work with?
That's a good question. The Two Bears, One Cave with Tom Segura and Burt Kreischer.
At 8 years old, you swore you'd be?
Owner of a candy shop.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
I don't know. Very sugar motivated at 8 years old, dude.
The favorite book or one you've pretended to have read? Jordan Peterson's Rules of...
No, I just read The Trading Game. What's his name? Gary Stevenson. It's about wealth inequality. He was a very famous trader. Fascinating book.
We first recorded this like 7 months ago, and you had just read that book too. So this is fake news.
I can tell you the last book I read was that, what was it? You gave it to me, 12 Christmases?
Oh, no.
Or 13?
5 Christmases.
Or yeah.
4 Christmas.
Yeah.
No, 5 Decembers or something.
Yeah. I just read that, and I was like, that's a
Book's
weird
good,
book.
though.
Yeah.
You like?
Yeah, no, it was super good.
Funniest American culture thing that you've found after moving to the U.S.?
I kind of love it now, but the whole like let's be number one and fighter jets over NFL stadiums has got to be one of the funniest things and the greatest thing at the same time.
You're very pro-American now.
Very pro-American, very pro demonstrating dominance, I guess. Yeah, it's hilarious.
What's your thought on the U.S. immigration policies?
Hey, I'm very pro-immigration as long as that immigration is the type of people you want in this country. I don't know. They got to contribute, I guess.
Mentor who changed your trajectory?
That's a good one. I feel like there's been a lot of people that have been really helpful throughout my career. And some of those people that I go to for help have changed over time. I think if I had to pinpoint my time at Uber, Aaron Schilkraut was the one who fought for me to become a product manager. And that was a big step in my career there. And it also helped me a ton when I was starting my company.
I wish we could get him on the pod, but I don't think he'll do it.
I don't think he'll ever do it.
I'm going to try. All right, if you weren't running Red Circle, you'd be?
Ooh, I don't know. Starting some other company.
And by the way, your favorite podcast, this is a trick question. It's supposed to be the early podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, what the
Let's do it again.
Dude, awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this.
All right. Thank you for having me, bro.